Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Again, in the new room, hopefully with better sound. And if I can do things to make the sound better, I will do so. I'm looking into different things. But today I want to talk about, and remember, if you like these videos, please subscribe, give me a like if you're so inclined. Today I want to talk about the frustrations of language learning. And I have talked about this before, and because there are moments of frustration, we all have them at different times. It comes up because I had a conversation with a fellow polyglot whose name is Robin, and we may even put this interview up here in a week or so. And he was interested in the subject of the sort of the language learning plateau, where we feel we're not making any progress. One of the people I spoke to referred to the early engagement with a new language as being the honeymoon period when we're all excited. And then the plateau is that long period where we feel we're not making any progress. Robin felt that the language learning plateau largely had to do with people who didn't speak as well as they would like to speak. But I have a slightly different perspective on the language learning plateau, where for me it's all about, my comprehension, where I feel that once I'm past the early stage, then it seems that it's just so difficult to acquire these low frequency words and to get used to the language and to understand better when I listen. So for me, it's more of a comprehension based thing. I feel that middle period is one of just a long road of getting to where you understand things better. But so if we look at frustration, in fact, there is frustration at every level. Again, if we have that initial, the honeymoon period where we discover a new language, and then we have that long intermediate period where we are basically trying to accumulate more words and get the brain more used to the language so that we understand better. Some people are worried about how they speak at that level. I'm not. But even in the advanced level, even at that level where we now understand well and we have a large vocabulary, there's another type of frustration. And that is that we continue to make the same mistakes. And we can't seem to, like in my Slavic languages, I just can't seem to nail the cases. And I hear, I was listening to our political, I'm curious because in Canada we're going to have a conservative party leadership, contest, because the previous conservative leader resigned. And so I wanted to hear how well they speak French. And so I listened to two of them in French, Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole. And I mean, it's just appalling, like especially gender, which is hard to nail. I know in Russian, cases are hard to nail. Gender is hard to nail. There's no gender in English. So how do you get used to saying it properly? So that's a frustration, obviously. Perhaps these people understand well, I don't know, but they have trouble producing the language correctly. So to summarize again, the frustration at the beginning period is, and this was the case in my Arabic and also in other languages, it's just, unless it's a language very similar, like if I try to study Serbo-Croatian, there's no frustration there because it's so similar to other Slavic languages that I've learned. It's just a matter of picking up slightly different vocabulary or a certain amount of different vocabulary and just letting the brain get used to it. So there's no frustration there. But if you go into something completely different, like Persian or Arabic, like when will I ever get used to this writing system? The letters mean different things. I confuse one letter with the other. I can't understand it. I listen 10, 15 times. I can't understand it. So those are the frustrations at the beginning stage. And there, the only solution is just to keep going. And my own strategy is to listen often to the same material. I have to get a toehold on the language. But it is frustrating when you listen to something for the 10th time and the same spot, is just noise. Even though you've read it and you know theoretically what words are supposed to be there, and you listen to it for the 10th or even 15th time, and you just don't understand it. So that's frustrating. So those are the frustrations at the beginning. And the frustration of trying to grab onto some vocabulary and try to get some sense of the language. So those are the frustrations. But there, you just work your way through them if you are motivated enough to learn the language. motivated by the thought of, wow, I'll be able to listen to Arabic one day, and I'll be able to listen to their podcast, and I'll understand what they're saying. And if they, on Twitter, I see videos of demonstrations in Iraq, and they're all shouting something, and I'll be able to understand that. And I even follow people on Twitter in Persian and Arabic, and I'll be able to read what they're saying. And even as I'm in the early stages, those are things that motivate me. I just have to stay with it. So that's the first stage. Now, the second stage, the frustrations in that middle period, for some people, it's the frustration that they can't speak very well. But to me, I'm not concerned about that. Like, I am going to have a conversation in Persian tomorrow. I haven't spoken Persian, gosh knows how long. I have no idea how I'll do. It doesn't matter. I know that I've been listening and increasing my knowledge, my sense of the language. I can now go through lessons at Link, and I can kind of work my way. I understand it. I can even guess better now at the pronunciation of words, which isn't always obvious from the way it's written. But it is frustrating because I have to read through it, and then I listen to it and I kind of understand, but it's not yet comfortable. To me, the comfort stage is where I can just take a podcast, listen to it, go with it, and then have it run through my brain, and I notice certain things, and yeah, there's some words I don't know, but the overall sense is enjoying the language. Here in the middle stage, I'm not yet enjoying it, but I don't have any illusions about how well I'm going to speak. So my frustration is that because the new words that I'm adding are all now much lower frequency than the words at the beginning stage, that it's just going to take a long time. Just pounding the language in my brain, picking up words as I go. Every page on Link has, I'll reread a lesson that I've read before, so there could be 20 yellow words there. I read through, I have to look every one of them up, kind of, driving it into my brain. And even as I read through and then I listen to it, it's all helping me get used to the language, but it's not comfortable in the sense that it's not immediate comprehension. So that's a bit frustrating. But in the final stage, that's the stage where I feel I want to try to clean up my grammar. Because now if I read a grammar book, and like in Russian, I would read a grammar book in Russian, but I've read it all before. But somehow that's the stage where I want to try to focus on areas where, I have trouble. I have trouble speaking correctly. I don't have trouble throwing the words together, but I have trouble throwing the words together correctly. And that gets back to our Canadian politicians, English speakers, who struggle, say, with gender. You kind of have to listen, notice the gender, save phrases, repeat those phrases so that when those phrases come up, you're going to naturally just spit out the correct gender. You can't try to think about gender while you're speaking. I can't think about cases. You do a little bit. You do a little bit think of gender because there are certain endings that are going to say it's masculine or feminine. But in French, that's not always reliable. But typically in Russian, if I get those cases that I manage to produce correctly, it's because I have a certain momentum. I have a certain rhythm, certain phrases where the case is there because that's just naturally what comes out. But until you reach the stage where you can do that, it is frustrating. And the advantage of doing the grammar at the advanced stage is that you have seen it all. Whatever they refer to in terms of a grammar rule, it describes something that you're familiar with. And now you just have to try to focus in on it, get used to it, get the brain used to it. And of course, this is all frustrating. Now, there could be other frustrations. Some people say that even when they're fairly advanced and they can listen to something, say an audiobook, but if they watch a movie and things are happening quickly, or if they're in a conversation with 5 people, that it's frustrating that they don't understand it better. But I think, to summarize, the only solution to all of these frustrations is to continue. That's the only solution. You just have to keep doing what you're doing. You have to speak more, you have to listen more, you have to read more. So you have to want to do it. You have to put in the time. You have to have the confidence that you will eventually get there, and not allow the frustrations to create negative feelings towards what you're doing, towards the learning process, towards the language, because everything that's negative is going to slow you down. Whereas reminding yourself how much you have already achieved where you were 6 months earlier, a year earlier, any of these positive things that sort of reinforce your belief that you're doing something worthwhile, that's what you have to go to in order to press through and just get that little bit better. Bearing in mind that you will never be perfect, so there will always be some sense of frustration that you're not as good as you would like to be. Okay, thank you for listening. Bye for now.